Hi and welcome to this basic LexisLibrary training session. The aim of this session is to identify the key features of your LexisLibrary services that will deliver benefits in the coming academic year and onwards. By the end of this session, you will be able to locate amended legislation and referring materials, locate case law and related cases and commentary, browse and search Holsbury's laws, and use Lexis Navigator to find legal terms. So let's have a look at the database. From the LexisLibrary homepage, over on the left-hand side of the page, we have the blue Quick Find box. The Quick Find box is the simplest and easiest way to locate any information on LexisLibrary. Let's start out by looking at a piece of legislation. Using the legislation title and year field, we can key in the name of the legislation that you require. As you start to key in the title, you'll see that we get a suggestions box below that with suggestions of pieces of legislation with that word in the title. If the piece of legislation that you're looking for does not appear within the list, you can override the suggestion box and keep on keying in what it is that you're looking for. This then takes us through to our results screen. You can see here that we have 278 results on screen. This all forms part of this one piece of legislation, the Equality Act of 2010, but each section is displayed on screen as a separate result. You can either select the section that you require and go directly to that, or the very first result in the list takes you through to the title page document. Within the title page document, we have the title of the legislation, the long title, and then the contents page for the legislation, where each section appears as a hyperlink. Above the title of the legislation, we have a stop press icon. This stop press icon takes you through to any amendments that are in the pipeline for the legislation. The legislation on LexisLibrary is shown as amended and as it currently stands today. Any amendments are incorporated into the text within 48 hours. Stop press displays to us changes that have recently been made to the legislation and changes that are in the pipeline. Here we have the sections that are affected, the date that the legislation will be changed, and the affecting legislation. If I just move back into the title page document, once we're within here, you can see over on the right hand side of the page we have some further value added information boxes. The one at the top here contains a link into a PDF version of the legislation, displaying the legislation in its entirety. We then have a Find Out More box with any related information. However, when we're in the title page document, the Find Out More box relates specifically to the entire piece of legislation. Once we're at section level, it applies to the section of legislation that you are viewing. If we select one of the sections of legislation, let's have a look at section 6 on disability. That takes us through to the text of that section. The stop press icon carries through if there are any amendments in the pipeline. We also have a status signal for the section. So here we can see we have a green tick stating it's in force with no amendments. Over on the right hand side of the page, we have a link through to our other formats available. Here we have a link to request a historical version of the legislation. This allows you to request legislation in 3 different formats, either as the legislation was when it was originally brought into force, as it was immediately before it was repealed, or you can also request point-in-time legislation. So if you required the Equality Act of 2010 but need to know how it stood on the 1st of September 2012, you can simply select the Request a Historical Version link, complete the form, and that piece of legislation will be emailed through to you. Below that box, we then have the Find Out More box. The Find Out More box is now specific to the section of legislation that you are viewing on screen. Here we have links through to related commentary, case law, and journal articles. Whatever your section of legislation is discussed in that further content that you take on LexisLibrary. We also have a link through to Holsbury's Annotations. Holsbury's Annotations are powered by Holsbury Statutes notes, and they are the explanation for your legislation. Below our commencement information, we then have a general note that sets out what this section of legislation means, what it's all about, how it has been used, how it's likely to be used, how it's likely to be perceived by the courts. So this gives you greater understanding and interpretation of your legislation. We then move on to have any additional information. This could be any words and phrases that have been judicially considered, any statutory definitions of any terms, or any related case law. If we just move back into section 6 of the legislation, you will see that we also have these speech bubbles alongside the legislation. That will pull out your annotation side by side with the text of the legislation if you would like to use the two sources at the same time. You can simply scroll through the annotations on screen whilst viewing the text of the legislation. If you would like to move into a different section of legislation, we have a grey button over on the left hand side, and that opens up your table of contents. From here we can move into any other one of the sections for this piece of legislation without having to navigate back to the results screen or the title page document. Let's now move on to taking a look at case law. By clicking on the LexisLibrary logo in the top left hand corner, this takes us back to our home page. From here, we can then use our case name or citation field within the quick find box. If you know the name of the case that you are looking for, simply key it in to the quick find box. If you only have one of the party names or part of the party names, that doesn't matter. Just key in whatever information you have. I'm going to look for the Reagan and Paul case. You can see that I have 11 results here on screen. All of these cases refer to the party names both Reagan and Paul within the title field. If we look under the court or tribunal field, you can see that these first few cases all list the Court of Appeal, and under the judgment date field they all have exactly the same judgment date. If we just draw our eye to the source column, you can see that a different source is cited by the side of each entry. This is simply because we have a different entry for each separate law report that we have available on the system. If in doubt as to which one to pick out, have a look at the case overview document, as this takes you through to our summary document. You can see in the case overview document, at the top of the document by the side of our party names, we have a signal. If I hover my mouse over the green diamond, it tells me positive treatment indicated. So I know that this case has not moved on to a superior court and been overruled, nor a subsequent case law cast negative light in the judgment. It's good law to use and cite as part of your work. Below our case name, we then have a list of all of the citations for the case. These are listed in the order of hierarchy of law reporting. Where it's available on LexisLibrary in full text, it appears as a blue hyperlink. We then go on to list the court and judgment date information, and then we have this catchwords and digest. This sets out the key facts of the case for you in a nice brief summary. Scrolling down the screen, we have 3 tables listed. The first one is the case history table. This shows us how the case has progressed through the courts. From here, we can see that our Reagan and Paul case actually originated in the Chancery Division, and this Chancery Division decision was reversed by the Court of Appeal. So as we would expect, we have this red negative treatment indicated icon over to the right hand side of the entry in the table. Below the case history table, we then have a cases referring to this case table. So these are all of the cases that have subsequently cited our Reagan and Paul Properties case. The table is set out detailing the treatment that the case gave our Reagan and Paul Properties case, the name of the case. You have any citations so that you can link through to the full text of the law report, court, date information, and then a signal for the case listed in the table. If you just want to see the summary document for any of the cases listed in the table, you simply click on the signal and it will take you through to the case overview document. There's one further table listed, that's cases considered by this case. So these are all of the cases that our Reagan and Paul Properties case considered when it went to trial. Set out in exactly the same way as the table above, we have the treatment that was given to the case name, any citations with links through to the full text, court and judgment date information. If you decide that you would then like to progress into the full text of the law report, we can scroll to the top of the screen and pick out one of the hyperlinks through to the full text. I'm going to select this All England Law Report, and you'll see that once the All England Law Report loads up on screen for me, we carry through our signal at the top there, telling us that the case has had positive treatment. We have a link back into the case overview document. Over on the right hand side of the page, we have a link into a PDF copy of the case. The PDF copy of the case displays the case exactly as per the hard copy, with all of the page numbers and paragraph references listed on screen. We also have a Find Out More box. Wherever our case has been referred to in other case law, in the journal articles, or the commentary that you take as part of your subscription, it's pulled out in hyperlinks over here on the right hand side. So let's move back to the home page. We'll now take a look at using Holsbury's laws online. There are 4 different ways of tackling Holsbury's laws. Over on your bookshelf on the right hand side of the page, you have an entry for Holsbury's laws, and below that there are links to both search and browse the content. If we select the browse link, this sets out Holsbury's laws in exactly the same way that you would expect to find it on the shelf in hard copy, with each volume listed on screen. Now we can either browse through the volumes listed on screen, identifying what it is that we're looking for, or we can run a search using the quick search box at the top of the screen. We can either search all of the volumes of Holsbury's laws, or we can put a tick by the side of the volume that we're interested in and simply search that one volume, or indeed several of them. If we were looking for some information regarding zoos, we could browse through our content to identify if any of these volumes look useful. Here we have an animals volume. If I click on the plus sign to the left of the animals volume, it will list the contents for me within that volume. I can see that section 8 is dealing with zoos. If I click on the plus sign to the left hand side again, it then opens up that section and lists the table of contents. If we would like some information on licensing and inspection, again clicking on the plus sign, it then lists the content that falls underneath that section. Where you see the page icon, you're at the lowest possible level, and you can then click through to view the content that falls under that paragraph. When using Holsbury's laws online, you must always ensure that you select the update button when it appears at the top of the document, as this will update the text to within the last 2 weeks, bringing it completely up to date for you. If you would like to navigate around Holsbury's laws and see the surrounding sections, again we have the grey button to the left hand side, and clicking on that opens up our table of contents so that we can navigate around the surrounding paragraphs. I'm just going to navigate back to the table of contents view, and from here you can see at the top of the page we have a drop down list where it says View Table of Contents. If I select that, I can then pull out the index to Holsbury's laws. So if you can't identify which volume it is that you need to look at, we can open up the index and then scroll through and search for a keyword. If I click on the plus sign by the side of Z, I can open that up and see that we have the word zoo listed there. If I click on the hyperlink into zoo, that then pulls out wherever this word is referred to within the index of Holsbury's laws, with hyperlinks by the side so that you can link through to the content. I'm just going to click on the LexisLibrary logo to navigate back to the home page, to show you the one other way to tackle Holsbury's laws, and that is using our Find a Legal Term box at the bottom of our Quick Find box on the left hand side of the page. If you think of a legal term that you would like to look at, for example, I'm going to key in the word landlord, you will see that you get a word wheel with a suggestion of the term that you may be looking for, or you can just click on the Find button to search across the content. This takes us through to our Find a Legal Term document, where at the top of the document there we have a short definition of the term that we are looking for. Over to the right hand side we have any related terms. Below our definition we have a series of tables pulling out definitions within key legislation, within key case law. The most useful link here is the link into key commentary. If I select that within the table, it then pulls out the key paragraphs of Holsbury's laws that that are dealing with our term. Selecting an entry from here will take you right into the relevant paragraph within Holsbury's laws. And from here we can simply click on our grey button to the left hand side to open up that table of contents and read the surrounding information. If we just move back into our Find a Legal Term document, you will see that beyond our links into key legislation, case law and commentary, we then have a link for Holsbury's principles. And these expert definitions from Holsbury's Laws of England. We also have a link into the index of Holsbury's Laws here, and this pulls out wherever your term appears within the index of that text, and again we have hyperlinks through to the content. I hope you found that useful. If you're struggling at all, we have a series of online training tutorials available on our LN Academy site. We also have a Facebook group with a feature to ask a Lexis trainer. There are lots of useful hints and tips on the Lexis Web Law Campus site, or if you're still struggling, please feel free to contact customer services. They're available from Monday to Friday from 8 until 8. Thank you very much for watching.